Hello, listeners. Welcome to Born Curious, coming to you from Harvard Radcliffe Institute. I'm Evelisa Estrada.
And I'm Heather Min. Each year on Radcliffe Day, the Institute awards the Radcliffe Medal, its highest honor, to someone embodying Radcliffe's commitment to excellence and impact. The 2026 medal went to Ruth J. Simmons. Born to a sharecropping family in East Texas, Simmons had no idea college was even an option for her, until one teacher saw her potential and changed everything.
And throughout her life story, Simmons has not only benefited from the transformative power of education, she's fought to make sure others had the same chance. She went on to lead Smith, Brown, and Prairie View A&M, making history at every stop. But she never left her roots behind.
Today, we bring you her conversation with Harvard President Emerita, Drew Gilpin Faust, in which she dives into a remarkable story and shares some choice words about the future of higher education.
What an honor it is to be here on the stage with Ruth Simmons, and what a joy it is to be here today with all of you. There's so much to celebrate this week here at Harvard, and today and this moment are something to celebrate so enthusiastically. As we hear the story of Ruth's life, it just is so uplifting and so inspiring. And now we've heard that you are a franchise player and a few other, an icon, all these wonderful words. And now you get a chance to use your voice to tell us who you are. So in the next few minutes, I hope we will have a wonderful time doing that together. I'd like to start at the beginning. Raphael Bostic said leadership begins at home. So tell us a little bit about those beginning years in Texas. You said in your commencement address here at Harvard a few years ago that you grew up on a diet of Jim Crow. Tell us a bit about what that was like.
First of all, Drew, thank you so much for doing this. I admire you so much, your leadership over the years. Although it's not a happy circumstance to talk about those difficult days, but with young people not having any sense of where this country has come from, I feel obligated to talk about it. What was it like? Well, first of all, there was such manifest general agreement in this country that if you were Black, you had no right to see yourself as a citizen of this country. You were at best relegated to bestial type work. You certainly had no intelligence, and you were undeserving of common courtesies and respect. And so as a child, I grew up understanding that I was separate from, different from, less than the whites in our community in East Texas. And what that meant is that there were certain behaviors that we were obligated to follow. And our parents were wonderful in teaching us how to behave, because if you failed to behave correctly, you could be summarily punished and then sometimes killed. And so they would tell us, when you are in town, step off the sidewalk when a white person is coming. Don't go into stores. Don't talk to white people in an aggressive way. And so they gave us a lesson in subservience, basically, which of course I didn't learn very well, but still, in those days I adhered to that, as all of us did. And so we survived that very difficult and brutal period. You know, Drew, we are so connected in this country, even though we dismiss our relationship to each other, that when my book came out, a young woman contacted me and identified herself as my cousin. She happened to be white. And she wondered if it might be possible for us to have a family reunion, the white members of the family and the black members of the family. I was floored by that. Now, this is 2025, okay, before it happens. When I go to my siblings and I say, you'll never imagine what happened, this white girl has told me that they now want to embrace us as members of the family, and they want to have a family reunion. Well, my siblings were, to a person, enraged by the idea, of course, because after all, if we were rejected before, why should we now be willing to do that? My reaction was different. I thought, well, this is manifestly evidence of the kind of evolution that takes place. And therefore, I thought we should do it. I have never wanted to spend my life being angry about that era, but so many people I know lived that anger, died with it, and passed it on to their children. I'm determined not to do that, because what will we be as a country if we hold on to that? We need to move on.
So, definite applause line. I'm so interested that you have moved back to Texas, though. And that, to me, symbolizes a confrontation with your past, a transcendence of your past, a celebration of a different element of your childhood. She was even recently the Grand Marshal of the Peanut Parade. Was that your title? So she's fully embedded in this Texas community.
Well, I wanted, ever since my childhood, to be seen as someone of that community. I want to represent the legacy of Jim Crow. I want to represent the people who have toiled across time in Texas and built institutions in that state. I want to be mired in it. And that's why in Texas, I happily speak to all groups in Texas. And I want to be sure that people understand that I am who I am today because of that journey, because of what I learned about racism and hatred and bigotry and misogyny. I am who I am today because I learned from that, and I grew from that, and I learned how to deal with that. So to me, that's what I represent, and I represent it best being in a deeply red state like Texas, where I can go all over Texas and proclaim, you guys are really wrong. And for some incredible reason, they can tolerate that from me. And I was amazed to get a letter in the mail once from the Texas State Cemetery inviting me to be buried there. Well, no, it was an honor to be, governors, highfalutin people who have excelled in Texas are buried in the Texas State Cemetery. And so I was given a plot there that is very lovely and is really right beside a stream. It's well tended and so forth. I accept that, and I plan to be buried in the Texas State Cemetery.
A Texan forever. That's
Texan
great.
forever.
But you had a resilience that enabled you to not fall into that pattern of hatred and bearing only the burden of Jim Crow, but to turn it into something different. What were the life experiences or the parts of your character that your parents nurtured that enabled you to get out of Texas before you came home to Texas?
Well, I have to credit my mother, who was immeasurably wise, uneducated woman, never had any of the benefits of modern life. She bore 12 children. She was a devoted wife to my father. But what she did was to teach us how to be people. And so she would be sitting on the porch shelling peas. Do you know what that is?
I do.
You know what shelling peas is? You all don't do that anymore. Come on. But that in the old days, you didn't get them frozen and prepared. You had to take them out of the pod. And so that was a laborious task that women performed. But while she's sitting there doing her chores, she's talking to us. And she says, never think of yourself as being better than other people. And never think that you are not as good as others. I don't know anything better than that to live by, frankly. I'm not better than anybody else as a human being. And I don't think they're better than I am, just in terms of our pure humanity. And so she would insist on appropriate behavior in her children. So one of them was, if you go to someone's house and you're lucky to be invited to their home and they offer you food, do not partake of it. Why? Because they may need it themselves. Okay? But when people came to our house, she'd give them all our food. She was immensely generous person, which my siblings tell me I inherited that from her because they know me to do things for people who are undeserving of the things that I do. So that family environment was something. We were isolated because we couldn't associate with people in that town, but we had each other. And that bond was so incredibly strong. We are still together today. We have never, and that was the great task for me when I was going to college, was to figure out a way somehow that I could strive at places like Harvard, but still be just another member of my family among people who couldn't go to college, who couldn't finish high school. My dear sister, Nora, for example, died 2 weeks ago, and she had never been anything other than a maid for her entire life. And I wanted to make sure I was never separated from them at all, and did not take on the affectations of learned or wealthy people, and I didn't mean it that way. I wanted to make sure that I never changed enough that I was not an integral part of my family. And I know I succeeded at that because they still criticize me heavily. You know what they say, Drew?
Tell me.
They say they don't know what all the fuss is about because I'm not all that. And
should have brought them all here today. So in a sense, your mother was the first mentor.
Absolutely.
But it seems to me the lessons that you just described that she transmitted to you were sources for leadership lessons for all the different institutions that you have headed and made so extraordinary.
I think that's absolutely right, because if you're standing, if you're in these places of power, it's so easy to feel that you don't matter very much. It's easy to feel that everybody else is smarter than you. But thanks to her grounding, I never let myself completely fall into that. I always had my voice, always, no matter what. I remember when I was president of Brown, and we were, as you know, meeting, the IB presidents were meeting, I would go on and on about how important it was for the Ivies not to stand apart from the rest of higher education. I've never shut down my voice ever. Some people wish I had, but I didn't. I didn't have the ability to do that because I felt singularly empowered by the circumstances of my young life. You are who you are. Embrace every part of who you are and use that. Speak to that. Show that. And that's what I always tried to do.
And that in itself is an argument for inclusion, because if you have people representing different paths and different parts, then you have a much stronger institution, entity, sector, or whatever. So the vehicle for your life turned out to be education, which then was your field. But there are a number of milestones along the way. A teacher in high school, I think, was critical to you. And then you've told me that your year at Wellesley was just so eye-opening. Also the nurturing of a historically black college in New Orleans. Tell us a little bit about those educational milestones. Before you became a leader in education, you were a participant in its riches and diversity.
Well, first of all, my high school teacher, Miss Lilly, was a teacher of speech and drama. I was very theatrical when I was a teenager.
You've been doing a pretty good job of it here today, too, Ruth.
I was impossible, and she, my mother died as I was going into my junior year, and she saw that I needed a mother, and she stepped in and just took control and tried to help me through the last 2 years of high school. And one of the things that because I was really horrible. I mean, really horrible. So, for example, when it really occurred to me that you could use knowledge as a weapon, and language as a weapon. And when I discovered that, I started using it in that way with my peers, because you can imagine I didn't fit in very well when I was a young person. I was different. And so I learned large words to intimidate people, and I would speak in very obscure ways and bring up things that could not be known by my peers, and so forth. So I had weaponized it fully, and she understood how sick that was, and so when it came to thinking about college, she was very fearful for me, because the colleges in Texas were just desegregating. Not all of them, but were just desegregating. And she knew I would never survive in a white environment in which I behaved that way. And so she said, I'm going to send you to a black college. And so she had gone to Dillard, and she convinced them to give me financial aid. And so I went to Dillard, where I continued to behave in the same way, but they were more tolerant of my sick behavior, except they saw a chance. And that is, I was called to the president's house one Saturday. I thought I was being kicked out because I had decided to boycott chapel. And I had told the administration that it was immoral for them to require chapel, because what if you're a Jew, or what if you're a Muslim, okay? And you're gonna require Protestant chapel? And they said, yes, every student. I said, then I won't go. But of course, there were no Jews or Muslims. But I felt it. I felt it so passionately. And so the president came up with a solution. They had a junior year program with Wellesley. And he called me to his house and he said, we've decided to send you to Wellesley College. That's why I got said.
And that experience, you have told me, was transformative.
Oh, it was wonderful. It set me on the path, of course, that I continued on. It was an amazing academic experience, and it was the first time I'd been in an environment with whites. So imagine coming from an all-black environment for all of my life, and then I landed Wellesley, which is virtually all white. They had to have a junior program because, of course, there were no blacks if they didn't bring students up from the South. But when I got there, it was thrilling because the courses were very challenging. But there's one thing that I noticed right away that I couldn't get over. And that is, there was a woman leading the college, Margaret Clapp. Oh my goodness. I had not until that moment imagined a woman being able to do something like that. I couldn't have imagined it, because I had 7 brothers and a dominant father, all of whom believed that women had a certain place, and it was certainly behind them, okay, and so forth. So in that mode, I couldn't have imagined it. And then in addition, my classes were challenging, and I had this experience in my French class where I was lost and decided I had to drop the course. So I went to my professor and said, I'm very sorry, but I'm going to have to drop the course because I'm lost. But he needed to sign my course card, and he refused. So I said, what am I to do with that? He said, just work harder. I was infuriated and disappointed in him, and that day, I wanted to drop out of college. And if I had had money to go home, I almost certainly would have dropped out of college. But I didn't have money to go home. And so I decided to work harder. And then I discovered, miraculously, that working harder enabled me to get better in the course, and I finished the course, right? It's amazing that the course that was going to help me in my college career ended up being the course that brought me to Harvard to get a PhD. So I tell my students all the time that failure is often the door to something extraordinary that you could not have otherwise imagined. And that certainly was the case for me with French. I thought I would run far away from French, but in fact, I learned to love it. and to be one of those people who loves French culture and French attitudes and so forth. I built my whole career on that very failure. Isn't that something? But that's what we do in our profession. That's what we do. And so I often insist to my students, if you're in a class where your professor is telling you how wonderful you are, and so forth, drop it. Find a course that's challenging, one where you have to work harder, because you get a lot more out of it than coasting through something that you know very well.
I think this relates to the problems of grade inflation that have been so much, doesn't it? Yes. So life lessons that you picked up along the way through these different institutions, but you're also being exposed to the variety of American higher education, which becomes kind of the essence of your leadership ultimately as you lead a women's college, an Ivy League institution, a historically Black college. So those are so different in so many ways, and yet you have found threads that tie all of it together. What is it that is essential to American higher education that is represented in all these different venues and forms?
But again, you see, I knew something that so many people found it difficult to apprehend, and that is all this business about who matters and who doesn't, who can and who can't, who belongs and who doesn't. I knew that was a lie. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is to, in my life itself, demonstrate what a big lie it was. And so I thought I would never go very far in higher education because of my mouth, because I never lost that, right? And so I thought I would be punished for it. So one day, the provost at Princeton, where I was at the time, called me in and asked me if I would direct Afro-American studies. And of course, my response was, "How dare you?" I said, "You don't respect Afro-American studies. That's very clear. And you don't respect me, because what you want is a Black face to lead Afro-American studies, and you know I don't have a background in Afro-American studies, and so this is a sham, and I won't participate in it." But I was one of very few Black faces at Princeton, and so as a matter of course, they called me back and said, "Okay, Ruth, okay, what would it take for you to do it?" And so I thought about it, and I thought, well, I'm unqualified, unquestionably the most unqualified person to do that job. But here's the thing, I cared about it. And I thought, well, maybe I should do things that I care about, even when I don't have the requisite knowledge. And so I went back with 8 demands. And I said, if you say no to one of them, I will not do it. I don't know why they didn't fire me, honestly. Really, I don't
know why you didn't have 9 demands.
But anyway, they said yes to everything. But number 1 on my list was, I want to bring to Princeton people who will show them what it's like to be in an environment where people are appreciated for the quality of their effort, the quality of their mind, and for what they can do and how they can inspire students. I want to have a chance to deliver that to Princeton. So I had a legal pad on which I wrote down a list of names of people that I thought could deliver on that. And I went down the list. The number 1 on the list was Toni Morrison. And number 2, I think, was Cornel West. Number 3 was Arnold Rampersad, and then Nell Painter, and so on. And we brought all of them to Princeton. And what I saw almost immediately was it struck me that this is something we can do in higher education. We can continue to teach people what it's really like to be in a university, right? What a real university should be. And so shortly after coming to Princeton, Tony won the Nobel Prize. And I thought Princeton was going to totally flip out after that. The Princeton president went to the ceremony where she was awarded the Nobel. They had a massive celebration at Princeton, and she became a figure. But more than that, what she brought to Princeton was this idea of this innovative idea. I said, Tony, what do you want to do? She said, I want to build an atelier. I said, well, you don't know what atelier is, but okay. And so she said, I want to bring artists from disparate genres together to create something new on site at Princeton. And that's what she did. She created the atelier. She brought artists like Jesse Norman, Kathleen Battle, Yo-Yo Ma, and then paired them with writers and created original works. Brilliant. And then she had something else that she did. She was inspiring and terrifying at the same time. And what she did was mentor a young woman who became Mackenzie Scott. And this is the thing. Mackenzie Scott benefited so much from the presence of Toni Morrison that she's dedicated her life and her wealth to helping Black institutions and other institutions. And imagine that, all because of this is what we do. We can bring people together to understand. It didn't work on Jeff,
with
though.
your list.
But anyway, so that was something. And then after that, Harvard came to me, I don't know if you know this, and asked me if I would chair the visiting committee for Afro-American Studies here because the department had fallen apart. So we came and we tried to help here as well. And then we said, well, I think you've got a novel problem, probably in retaining people, but the person who could probably hold it all together is Skip Yates. Henry Rosofsky said, oh no, never. Yeah, he did. Because you see, Skip had this reputation at Duke. High-flying kind of, they'd write articles in the newspaper about his wealth and so forth, and Henry thought that would be very bad for Harvard. But then I said, well, no, Henry, you don't understand. Skip doesn't fit in North Carolina, okay? But if he comes to Harvard, he'll be just like everybody else because he has an immense ego. And he has fit in perfectly here, hasn't he? He's fit in He has been wonderful for Harvard.
He has.
And doing the same kind of thing for Harvard that, of course, Toni was able to do for, yeah.
So, Ruth, that was one of your many services to Harvard over the years. I'm serious, it was. And I want to ask you about another one, a more recent one, which is your testimony in the affirmative action case in 2018. You were an extremely powerful and moving witness in that case. And the judgment of the court to which you testified was in our favor. It was overturned at the Supreme Court. And I wonder if you would comment on your reflections now, what are we, 3 years almost exactly from the Supreme Court decision to overturn affirmative action. What do you think as you consider that decision, and what do you prescribe or advise for how we should look forward in the wake of the elimination of affirmative action?
Well, we've now seen the follow-on from that, Civil Rights Act, we get lots of other things. So there is a pervasive agenda to which that was actually attached, and we didn't realize it, I think, at the time. And so I think today about the path that led us here, and it's a complicated story, because one of the things that we did in trying to build a nation of inclusion is we focused on particular groups to the detriment of the little poor white kid in a trailer park. What about them? So we made a mistake, is what I'm saying. And we were not inclusive enough. I think going forward, we just have to discipline ourselves not to project that we are more suffering, more deserving of largesse, more downtrodden than everybody else in the world, and therefore we deserve. I think that's not a workable narrative anymore, okay? Because malevolent forces can use that against our desire, which is, in my view, a very pure desire for us to come together and to work together and to be one nation. But it's been used very cleverly against us and against the country, and now we're seeing the result of that, the unwinding of decades of progress. And we are going to have to dig out of it in a painful way, I fear, but we will dig out of it. I'm convinced of that. It's just going to take time, and it's going to take the right people. And so in our universities, I hope we are forming the right cadre of leaders who will be able to take this on and recognize it for what it is and release us from this perilous period that we're in now.
Well, and so we come back to leadership, which is the theme of the day and your remarkable message of your life. And the perilous times we are in call for leadership more than ever. What can universities do to make sure they accomplish the task you just described? And what are the characteristics of leadership in this moment, 2026, that might be different or more complicated or harder to find or harder to nurture or easier to nurture? Is there a particular characteristic of leadership in this time that we should be attending to?
I think it's very important for leaders in higher education to evince an interest in, a love for, a generosity toward the broad spectrum of communities in this country. I think for a while we were so enamored of the elite status that we just drove that relentlessly and built up enough resentment that it's possible for demagogues to come after higher education with success. And why? Because there are enough people out there who feel wounded by what we've done, who feel left out by what we've been as institutions. We have to be capacious enough as institutions to make sure that everybody understands we are about this country. We're about building the country. We're about building opportunity for everybody. And we stand together as institutions, not this group that's better or that group that's less than. We are all in it together. And I always thought that when they came after Harvard, the thing that should have happened is every higher education institution in this country should have stood up at that moment and said, no. No. There's a wonderful image in, in a film, Gandalf. Curry, where's Gandalf is in what? Lord of the Rings, okay. And so Gandalf is this magisterial figure with a white beard and a flowing gown, and he has a staff. And he stands at one point and plants the staff and says, "You shall not pass." Alan, that's what I want you to do, okay? You shall not pass. And I want every university president, every faculty in this country, what has happened to the faculties across this country? You let people wander in to tell you what to teach, and then you say nothing that's happening around this country. You let government come in and tell you what you have to teach and what you can't teach. You let government frame your language. What is wrong with the faculties of this nation that they are permitting that to happen without standing together as one? Because I'm convinced that if the faculties across this country do that, it cannot stand. It cannot stand. So my hope is the leadership we need now is a leadership that understands it's not about protecting your own institution right now. It's about protecting what we do. It's about protecting this venerable profession that has built so much and made this country so great. That's what it's about, okay? And I'm sorry, I'm getting carried away.
Keep at it. I don't want to stop you. It's so wonderful to hear you.
But there's one thing that I think I've always leaned into that I think is important in this moment more than ever, and that is governance. Governance. We are better right now than the country at governance. We model democratic values in universities. When we do it right, we are modeling how you can run a complicated country of difference and still move ahead. We model that on campuses. We've got to dig into, lean into governance right now. Because what are they doing in Texas? Eliminating faculty governance. Why? Because of the power that comes with governing together, arguing, reaching conclusions that you can all buy into, and moving forward together. That's why I was invited to speak at a governance, a meeting of the faculty governance groups around the state of Texas. And I got to the meeting and I said, well, where's the University of Texas? Where's the faculty governance group at the It's been eliminated by the state. But how do you come in and eliminate a faculty governance? They're doing it all over, and it's coming to someplace near you if you don't stand up and say, you shall not pass. We can do that. We can do that together.
We are We are just about at the end of our time, but what a wonderful set of words from Ruth to end with. You shall not pass. And I want to say thank you, Ruth, for your courage throughout your career. Thank you for your courage at this moment. And thank you for inspiring all of us to put our courage forward in this moment of such opportunity and crisis.
Thank you. It's been a great honor to be here. Thank you.
That concludes today's program.
Born Curious is brought to you by Harvard Radcliffe Institute. Our producer is Alan Grazioso. Kevin Grady, Anna Song, Cabin 3 Media, and Productions, Inc. provided editing and production support. Many thanks to Jane Huber for editorial support. And we are your co-hosts. I'm Evelisa Strada.
And I'm Heather Min.
Our website, where you can listen to all our episodes, is radcliffe.harvard.edu/borncurious.
If you have feedback, you can email us at info@radcliffe.harvard.edu.
You can follow Harvard Radcliffe Institute on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, and YouTube. And as always, you can find Born Curious wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for learning with us.
And join us next time.